couple hours ago, I turn on my camera, I turn on my lights, and I go to shoot this video. And of course, this video is all about anticipating the unexpected. You know, we see a lot of things, a lot of trends in people's personal finances. We're noticing trends in Canadian real estate, as you're noticing in the news. And just as I go to hit record, the power goes out. How on the nose is that? Because I definitely didn't anticipate that. Let's talk about the 3 warnings that I have for people who are looking to buy a home and enter into the Canadian real estate market, or have already bought a home and seemingly escaped this housing market mess. And these warnings are really based on some of the trends that I'm seeing in people's personal finances. They're based on national data and just a general sense of what's being reported on in the news. I think there's a lot of people out there right now that are hurting financially. Well, in fact, I know they are. But I also think that they're making decisions that are making them feel better now, but are going to have long-term consequences. Oh, no! No! So what I'm hoping for is that we can have conversations, that we can change the dialogue so that we can make decisions with a little bit more long-term focus and hopefully reduce some of the pain that these people are going to experience in that longer term. The first warning I have is for those that haven't done a risk assessment yet on their personal finances. And the truth is, for most Canadians, in order to do this properly, you're going to have to talk to certain professionals. You're going to have to talk to an accountant, you're going to have to talk to a mortgage broker, and you're going to have to talk to a financial planner. Because without doing that, there may be certain corners that you don't know to look behind that may threaten your current financial situation. For instance, there is more than half the country right now that hasn't really felt the true impact of these increased rates because they locked in their mortgage, probably the largest debt that they pay on a month-to-month basis, some time ago. And those mortgages are going to start coming up for renewal. And I think there's this thought by a lot of Canadians that interest rates are going to come sloping down fast enough that when their mortgage comes up for renewal, they're going to somehow feel less pain because the interest rates will have come down at that point. And while that's probably true to some extent, if you look at what's happening with the banks and what the banks are forecasting for the next 4 to 5 years, they're anticipating, at least internally, that the mortgage rates are only going to drop by about 2% from where they are now in about 4 to 5 years. It's this long sloping curve. And so all of those mortgages are going to renew before they come down to that new bottom. And truthfully, 1 or 2% lower than where we are right now is still 1 or 2% higher than where you're probably currently at. So you're going to still have that payment shock. I think the problem is even larger than that though, particularly if you're a condo owner. I mean, if you own your house, it's a freehold title. You have your property taxes, which of course has gone up. You have your insurance, which of course has gone up. And you have repairs and maintenance, which of course has gone up. But if you own a condo, what you'll typically find is a lot of these condo boards have deferred a lot of maintenance. And in these new cost environments, that is definitely to your detriment. I'm noticing a lot right now when people are purchasing condos and we're going through the reserve fund studies, more and more condo boards are not properly funded to handle repairs and maintenance. Because yeah, maybe they set aside $100,000 for a roof, but now that same roof is going to cost $200,000 in order to replace. So all of these reserve funds that they've now built up over the last decade to weather the storm in the events that certain repairs and maintenance are done, particularly the larger ticket items, is now well underfunded because inflation has worn away their purchasing power. Unfortunately, what this means for condo owners, or if you're thinking about buying a condo, is that in the future, there's likely going to be cash calls if the reserve fund can't be built up quick enough, and dramatic increases in condo fees, and we're already starting to see that happen. I've seen condo fees go from $280, the condo board meets, reassess the reserve fund at their AGM, and then realize, wow, we have to crank this up to build it back up, and all of a sudden now they're cranked up to $680. And we're starting to see more and more of this. And that's if you're lucky, because the cash calls can truly surprise you more than anything else. Now, if you're not sure what a cash call is, here's a quick example. Let's say that you are one of 40 units. There's 40 units in your complex, and for whatever reason, that roof needs to be replaced. So all of a sudden, the condo board calls you up and says, hey, there wasn't enough money. We were short when we were trying to replace the roof, and it was $120,000 more than we expected it to be. $120,000 divided by 40 units is $3,000. And so, hey, guess what? You have to pony up and give $3,000. Now, you might be like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to give them $3,000. Well, guess what? The moment you bought the condo, you signed up for that. So you have to really be aware that these cash calls are going to start becoming significantly more frequent, particularly because repairs and maintenance costs are so through the roof, and particularly because a lot of these condo boards don't have reserve funds that are adequately prepared for that inflationary environment that we went through. My second warning goes back to the thought that there are certain Canadians that are suffering so much right now that they're making sort of knee-jerk reactions and creating strategies, coping mechanisms really, to help them get through these times, but are going to have potentially severe consequences later. For instance, just quickly on the mortgage side of things before I talk about something else, there are a lot of Canadians that when they were trying to escape their variable rate mortgage payments, went and locked in fixed rate contracts. And yes, these mortgages came at lower rates, but they also had really, really bad penalty clauses in a lot of their cases. And unfortunately, what that means is if they have to break their mortgage for any reason, maybe they're trying to pursue lower rates in the event that rates decline or things unexpectedly happen, like divorce, they may find themselves in a situation that they regret the day that they signed that contract. But there are other things that are happening right now that people are doing to conquer the pricey real estate markets that I think aren't entirely well thought out. For example, here's an article that came out last month from the Vancouver Sun that talks about how some people in Vancouver, complete strangers, are pooling their money together in order to buy houses. And right off the surface, I mean, you might think that's a stupid idea. But if you spend some time really thinking about it, you think, no, that's a really stupid idea.
Facts! It's facts! It's not facts. These sites is not facts.
I joke and all, but the truth is this is some people's lives, and I actually find it sad that they felt that this was their only option. I still think it's a bad choice, but the fact that they felt that it was their only one is actually quite sad. The article goes on to say that there was this family of 4 and they were living in a 680 square foot condo at the time. And being a family of 4 myself, I can appreciate how cramped that must have been. Of course, they said that they decided that the best way to get more space would be to split a house with someone. So they did what any sane, rational person would do and started with friends and family. And when that, of course, didn't work out, they posted an ad on the internet. Because you could trust people on the internet. Sure enough, they eventually found another family of 4 in a similar situation as theirs, and a few months later, they bought a house together. Now, like the article said, it's not uncommon for families to live together. In fact, entire generations will sometimes buy a house and have generational living. But that's families owning a house together. The fact that these are complete strangers puts a whole different spin on it. It's kind of like you're dating another family, but with your family. And as you would expect, that could lead to some pretty messy situations, especially with how prevalent divorce and common law separations are in our culture. Because now you have 3 different relationships that are involved in this transaction. You've got the one couple, you've got the second couple, and you've got the relationship that the 2 couples have together. If any one of those dissolves, messy or not, that could strain the entire arrangement. On top of that, all of these people are buying a house together because they can't financially afford the house on their own, meaning there's no viable way that they're going to be able to buy that house off of you or pay out a partner in the event that that relationship dissolves. You are potentially financially stuck to that other couple. And worse yet, there are many situations most likely where a lot of these people are all on the mortgage. That's how they qualified for the mortgage in the first place. If any one of those couples comes into financial hardship, it also leans quite heavily on the other couple. Having your fate tied to another family that's going through the same financial struggles as you are probably isn't a prudent idea. And that's just scratching the surface for the amount of problems that these people could have, like repairs and maintenance. If something goes wrong with the house, whose responsibility is it to get fixed? And how are they going to handle disagreements when that arises? The third warning is to focus on your cash flow, and more importantly, the steps that you'll take if that cash flow is ever threatened. A couple years ago, I was saying that all of this money printing and the loose fiscal budgets that we were experiencing were going to be inflationary in nature, and that the Bank of Canada was going to be forced into raising rates in 2022. And this, of course, was when the Bank of Canada was saying
interest rates are going to be low for an extended period.
Yeah, we knew that was bullshit. Just like we know that in the future, the government is going to have to start cutting back. A lot of the financial programs that have been rolled out in the last few years have been funded almost entirely on debt. And the unfortunate part about that when you're funding programs through debt is eventually you run out of money, or you run out of the capacity to make more money without causing other problems. So what kind of plans have you put in place in the event that the $10 childcare program gets repealed? Now, do I think the childcare program is actually going to be cut? No, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be modified or reduced. You know, there's articles out there saying how Canada is easing the burden for parents. But the truth is that if you're easing the burden for one group using tax dollars, that means you're putting the burden on some other group. And there is a financial cost to have that childcare program. I understand the benefits of. I understand why people want it, but that program was created by a government that has never balanced a budget, and our day of reckoning is coming. Which also means that once the government is forced into a position where they can't just keep dumping money into the Canadian economy, you may see economic activity slow to some degree, which may not be a bad thing on the inflationary side of things, but it also means that you may not see the same wage increases or bonuses that you would otherwise be expecting or used to. The future is not all bad though. Yes, currently right now we're dealing with higher rents and higher mortgage payments, and we have a government that basically says that's your problem.
Be blunt as well. Housing isn't a primary federal responsibility.
And yes, insurance and property taxes and repairs and maintenance are all on the rise. But it seems to be plateauing already. And when a new government is eventually elected, whenever that is, you're going to see some of the policies that didn't make sense to begin with taken back, like the carbon tax that has so grossly impacted people's monthly grocery bills.